A torrential downpour lashed Arlington, but the real storm was a man sneering at the female Sentinel. He saw a woman in a costume, a prop for tourists. He was about to meet a warrior forged in fire. The rain fell in relentless, gray sheets, drumming a somber rhythm on the marble plaza of the tomb of the unknown soldier. It was a sound of mourning, a constant whisper that clung to the rows upon rows of pristine white headstones stretching across the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. Each stone was a story cut short, a life given in sacrifice, but none held the collective weight of the tomb itself. A sacred monument to the unidentified fallen, those who had given everything, including their names. At the heart of this solemn theater stood Sergeant Anya Petrova. 30 years old, with eyes the color of a winter sky, she executed her patrol with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. Her polished black boots struck the slick, wet stone exactly 21 times, the sound echoing like a metronome counting out the seconds of eternity. Click, 21 paces south. Click, a turn executed with the sharp, clean lines of a surgeon's cut. Click, a 21-second pause, motionless, a statue carved from duty itself. Anya was a third-generation soldier, a legacy forged in the small, flag-draped towns of Pennsylvania, where service was not a choice, but a calling. Her navy blue uniform, the iconic armor of the Tomb Guard, was immaculate despite the downpour, its brilliant gold buttons gleaming against the muted light. Rainwater trickled from the brim of her cap, tracing paths down her temples, catching in the fine, blonde hairs that had escaped her severe bun. Beneath that uniform, etched into her memory, were 2 tours in the rugged mountains of Afghanistan. The Tomb Guard identification badge, one of the rarest and most coveted in the U.S. Army, was pinned to her chest, but it was the unseen scars that truly defined her. To Anya, this post wasn't a performance. It was a sacred vow, a silent conversation with the ghost she had sworn to honor. A small crowd huddled under a sea of black umbrellas, their faces a mixture of reverence and idle curiosity. A group of schoolchildren on a field trip whispered excitedly, their teacher gently hushing them as they pointed at Anya's flawless movements. An elderly veteran, his jacket heavy with campaign ribbons, stood silently, his gaze fixed on the tomb, a shared understanding passing between him and the lone sentinel. Among them, almost hidden by the crowd, was Colonel Eva Rostova. In her 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and silver hair tucked neatly under her service cap, she watched with a quiet intensity. Her own uniform was a testament to a storied career, decorated with medals earned in deserts and jungles far from this place. She had served alongside Anya's father years ago and had watched Anya grow from a determined girl into a formidable soldier. A flicker of fierce pride warmed her gaze as she observed her protege. For Colonel Rostova, Anya wasn't just a soldier. She was the embodiment of a legacy, a living testament to the strength of the women who served. The somber atmosphere shattered as a figure shouldered his way through the crowd with an abrasive lack of respect. Jack's rider was a discordant note in a symphony of honor. He was in his mid-30s, tall and broad-shouldered, moving with an arrogant swagger that broadcasted his contempt for the world around him. He wore ripped, designer jeans, a black hoodie pulled over his head, and scuffed, steel-toed boots that scraped against the sacred stone with deliberate insolence. A web of intricate tattoos snaked up his neck from under his collar. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the scene before landing on Anya, and a smirk twisted his lips. He didn't see a soldier. He saw a target. "You gotta be kidding me." Jax's voice sliced through the respectful hush, loud and grating. He stood at the very edge of the roped-off plaza, hands jammed in his pockets, projecting his disdain for everyone to hear. "Hey, Barbie, nice cosplay. Did they run out of men for this gig?" A palpable tension rippled through the crowd. A mother instinctively pulled her young daughter closer, her umbrella dipping as if to shield her from the verbal venom. The old veteran's back stiffened, his jaw tightening. Anya gave no sign she had heard him. Her focus remained absolute, her gaze locked on a distant point beyond the horizon. 21 paces. Turn. Pause. The rhythm of duty was her shield. Jax, emboldened by her silence, stepped closer, his boots splashing carelessly in a puddle. "What's the deal, sweetheart? Does that rifle even work? Or is it just for show? Bet you can barely lift it." His laughter was a harsh, ugly bark that desecrated the quiet air. A few tourists shifted uncomfortably, their phones lowering as the spectacle turned sour. Colonel Rostova's eyes narrowed, her expression turning to ice. She recognized his type instantly. Men who mistook discipline for weakness and saw a woman in uniform as an affront to their own fragile masculinity. "Look at her, all dressed up and playing soldier," Jax jeered, playing to the uncomfortable audience he had created. He gestured dismissively at Anya's immaculate uniform. "This is what it's all about, right? A little show for the tourists." A complete joke. Beside Colonel Rostova, a man in his 70s muttered to his grandson, "Stay back, son. This one's trouble." The boy's eyes were wide, his hand clutching his grandfather's tightly. Anya's face remained a mask of impenetrable discipline, but a trained eye could see the subtle shift. The tightening of her grip on the M14 rifle, the almost imperceptible change in her posture. She wasn't just marching. She was assessing a threat, her combat instincts humming just beneath the surface of her ceremonial duty. Jax, feeding off the nervous energy of the crowd, took the final, irrevocable step. He ducked under the velvet rope, violating the sacred space with a triumphant sneer. He was close now, his presence a physical intrusion into the sanctified air around the tomb. He circled her slowly, like a predator sizing up its prey, his eyes raking over her from head to toe. "What's under all this?" he murmured, his voice a low, invasive drawl. He reached out, his fingers tracing the crisp sleeve of her uniform with a disgusting familiarity. "All muscle, but just padding to make you look tough?" The crowd gasped audibly. This was no longer just heckling. It was a physical violation. Colonel Rostova took a half-step forward, a protective instinct flaring in her chest, before her own training forced her to halt. She had to trust Anya's training. Jax's hand moved higher, his grimy fingertips brushing against the metals on Anya's chest, making them clink softly. "Nice little collection of trinkets. You buy these online? What did you do to earn them? Stand still really well." Each word was a calculated insult, designed to provoke, to shatter the discipline he so clearly despised. The medals weren't trinkets. They were stories of valor, of firefights in places Jax couldn't imagine, of courage under extreme pressure. Anya's knuckles, wrapped around the stock of her rifle, were bone white. Her breathing remained steady, a testament to the iron control she wielded over herself. But inside, a cold fury was building. Every taunt, every disrespectful touch, was an attack not just on her, but on every soldier, living and dead, that she represented. She could feel the weight of their honor on her shoulders, a weight Jax was trying to tarnish. He leaned in closer, his breath hot and smelling of stale coffee against the cool, rain-slicked air. "You can't do anything, can you? Just a pretty statue while I mess with your costume." His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, filled with a dark, ugly glee. "I bet I could take this rifle right out of your hands, and you just have to stand there and watch." The M14, a symbol of ceremony, suddenly felt charged with lethal potential. The air grew thick, the rain a steady drumbeat counting down to an inevitable explosion. Jax's hand slid from her metals, moving with deliberate slowness toward the polished wood and steel of the rifle. His fingers trailed along the cold barrel, a final act of contempt. "Let's see what happens when we take your little toy away," he whispered. "Time to show everyone what a fraud you really are." In the space of a heartbeat, everything changed. As Jax's fingers tightened around the barrel of the M14, his muscles coiling to rip it from her grasp, Anya exploded into motion. It wasn't the frantic movement of panic, but the devastatingly efficient action of a highly trained warrior. Years of relentless drilling, of muscle memory honed in the crucible of combat, took over. Pivoting on the ball of her foot with flawless grace, she swung the rifle in a tight, powerful arc. The heavy buttstock of the M14 connected with Jax's chest with a sickening, hollow thud that seemed to momentarily silence the rain. It was a sound of dense muscle and bone meeting solid steel. Jax staggered backward, a strangled gasp escaping his lips. The arrogant sneer vanished, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. His eyes, wide with disbelief and pain, stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. He had expected a doll. He had found a hornet's nest. His boots slipped on the wet marble as he fought for balance, one hand clutching his chest where the blow had landed. "If you can't do that," he wheezed, the words hollow, his bravado utterly shattered. The crowd stood frozen, a collective statue of shock. A few people fumbled for their phones, not to record the drama, but to dial 911. As quickly as she had moved, Anya had already resumed her ceremonial stance, the rifle perfectly positioned at her shoulder. It was as if nothing had happened, but the air around her had changed. The ceremonial guard was gone, and in her place stood a sentinel, a lethal protector whose boundary had been crossed. Humiliation and rage flooded Jax's face, turning it a blotchy red. The pain in his chest was nothing compared to the wound to his ego. He had been effortlessly overpowered by the very person he had dismissed as a joke. "You think you're tough, huh?" He coughed, his voice a ragged rasp. "That was a lucky shot. Let's see you handle a real fight." He clenched his fists, the tattoos on his knuckles stretching tight. The veterans in the crowd watched with grim expressions. They knew what was coming. Anya's stillness wasn't passivity. It was the coiled calm of a predator. "I'm going to take that rifle from you, you little..." Jax growled, his voice laced with a desperate, venomous fury. He lowered his stance, preparing to lunge, his prison yard instincts overriding any semblance of reason. He was going to teach this woman a lesson. The crowd shrank back, a mother pulling her children behind a marble pillar. Colonel Rostova's hand instinctively went to her own chest, her fingers brushing against her medals. The rain fell harder, blurring the scene into a watercolor of impending violence. Anya's stance shifted, an almost imperceptible adjustment, but it was enough. This was no longer a guard on patrol. This was a soldier on a battlefield. Jax lunged. His boots scraped against the stone as his body became a blur of raw, uncontrolled aggression. But before he could cover half the distance between them, a sound ripped through the air that changed everything. The gunshot was a deafening crack, a whip of sound that bounced off the marble of the tomb and echoed across the cemetery, momentarily silencing even the pounding rain. In one fluid, seamless motion, Anya had brought the M14 to port arms, chamber round, and fired a single, decisive warning shot straight into the gray, weeping sky. The sharp, acrid smell of gunpowder sliced through the damp air, an undeniable scent of reality. Jax froze mid-lunge, his body locked in place as if turned to stone. The raw fury on his face evaporated, instantly replaced by a wide-eyed, primal fear. The rifle was real. The bullets were real. The woman holding the rifle was real. And he had just made a catastrophic, life-altering mistake. "Do not move." Anya's voice was steel. It wasn't loud, but it carried an absolute authority forged in combat zones where a single command could mean the difference between life and death. The barrel of the M14 was now leveled, not at him, but at a low, ready position, its presence an unshakable promise of further action. Jax's hands shot up slowly, trembling, not from the cold, but from the sudden, terrifying understanding of his own stupidity. I didn't," he stammered, his tough guy facade crumbling into dust. Against the solemn grandeur of the tomb, he suddenly looked small, pathetic, a man utterly undone by his own arrogance. "On your knees," Anya commanded, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. He dropped so fast his knees cracked hard against the stone. He kept his hands raised, fingers spread in a gesture of desperate, abject surrender. Sweat mixed with the rain on his face, stinging his eyes as he stared at the unforgiving ground. The veterans in the crowd nodded slowly, a look of grim satisfaction on their faces. This wasn't a show. This was the raw, unyielding face of military discipline, the kind they had lived by their entire lives. "The uniform you mocked," Anya's voice cut across the silent plaza, each word clear and precise, "has been worn by women who died for this country. The rifle you tried to take protects the honor of soldiers who gave more than you can possibly comprehend." The distant wail of sirens grew rapidly closer. The crowd remained perfectly still, a silent witness to the unfolding justice. Armed cemetery police swarmed the plaza, their boots splashing through the puddles, weapons drawn. They took in the scene in an instant. Jax kneeling in submission, Anya standing like a granite sentinel, and the awestruck crowd watching it all. "Stay on the ground," an officer barked, though Jax hadn't moved a muscle since the shot was fired. His shoulders slumped in defeat as they pulled his hands behind his back and secured them with cuffs. The swagger was gone, replaced by the heavy weight of humiliation. With the threat neutralized, Anya flawlessly executed a series of movements, returning the rifle to its ceremonial position on her shoulder. The rain continued to wash over her uniform, but it could not touch the resolve within. As the police hauled the defeated Jax to his feet, one of the senior officers approached Anya's post. He stopped at a respectful distance and gave a sharp, appreciative nod. "We'll need your statement, Sergeant. Attempting to disarm a tomb sentinel is a major federal offense." Before Anya could respond, Colonel Rostova stepped forward from the crowd, her presence commanding immediate attention. Her medals glinted in the fading light as she addressed the officer, her voice steady and clear. "I witnessed the entire event, officer. This soldier displayed a level of professional restraint that was nothing short of textbook. She is a credit to this uniform and an honor to every soldier who serves." The old veteran who had been standing nearby chimed in, his voice gruff with emotion. "Damn right. Back in my day, a stunt like that would have earned him a whole lot more than a warning shot." His young grandson looked up at Anya, his eyes wide with a newfound admiration that replaced his earlier fear. The crowd, which had been silent, began to murmur, their whispers filled not with fear, but with profound respect. A young girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, is she a superhero?" The mother knelt, her voice soft but firm, filled with pride. "No, honey, she's something even better. She's a real American soldier." As Jax was led away to a waiting police van, his head hung low, he was no longer a threat, but a lesson. The crowd watched him go, their phones now capturing not a spectacle of disrespect, but a moment of hard-won reverence. Colonel Rostova walked to the edge of Anya's patrol route. As the rain finally softened to a light drizzle, she didn't speak. She simply drew herself to attention and rendered a crisp, perfect salute, a gesture of profound respect from one warrior to another, from one generation of servicewomen to the next. Anya's gaze remained fixed forward, her duty unbroken. But as she executed her next turn, there was a nearly imperceptible nod of acknowledgement, a silent message that passed between them. Duty, honor, respect. The narrator's voice returns, smooth and reflective. In a world where symbols are often questioned and traditions mocked, today's events at Arlington serve as a powerful reminder. The Sentinels of the Tomb are not props. They are warriors, guardians of a sacred trust. Their silence is not weakness, it is strength. Their stillness is not passivity. It is a state of constant, unwavering readiness. Anya resumed her march. 21 steps. Turn. Pause. The rhythm was the same, but for everyone who witnessed it, the meaning had been forever deepened. The tomb stood, as it always had, a monument to sacrifice, guarded by soldiers like Anya Petrova, who embody the timeless values that no storm can ever wash away. What does true strength look like? How should honor be defended when it comes under attack? The real question isn't why these Sentinels stand their ground, but what it takes to truly understand the depth of their commitment. If this story inspired you, share it to honor all the women who serve. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and always comment with respect. Subscribe for more stories of quiet heroes.